At 1-800-Flowers.com, we know that connections are at the heart of being human. Whether celebrating life's joys or comforting during tough times, 1-800-Flowers helps you express what words can't. For nearly 50 years, millions have trusted 1-800-Flowers to deliver thoughtful gifts that help create lasting bonds. Because it's more than just a gift. It's your way of showing you care. Visit 1-800-Flowers.com/podcast and connect today. That's 1-800-Flowers.com/podcast.
Welcome to Sports Management Podcast, where you will hear interesting sports management professionals share their stories, experiences, and passion for the sports management industry. I am your host, Marcus Philipson. This episode is sponsored by InSport Education, the online business school for sport. Click the link in the description below and head over to their website, and now you can download a free PDF, a guide to graduate careers in sports business. Also check out their courses Foundations of Sports Business, Private Equity in Sports, and much more. Now, today's guest is Kelli Masters. Kelli is an attorney, an NFL sports agent, and founder and president of KMM Sports. She is recognized as one of the most influential women in the sports business, and she shares her story in her book High Impact Life. She has decided to inspire others, not with her successes, but with her vulnerability, sharing not only the victories, but also the battles and failures along the way. In 2010, she made history when she was the first woman to represent an NFL first-round draft pick. She's on top of a male-dominated field, and she's running her own firm, KMM Sports. Moreover, Kelli is also an adjunct professor at Oklahoma University. Get ready to learn what it takes to be an NFL agent, how you move forward when people tell you that you won't make it in the industry, Kelli's best advice for young women in sports, and much more. Kelli Masters, welcome to the Sports Management Podcast.
Thank you so much. It's so good to join you today.
I'm super excited to talk to you, and you are an attorney, an NFL agent, and the founder and president of KMM Sports. So can you just tell us a little bit about what you do?
Sure. So I've been an attorney for a little over 21 years. I did some legal work prior to becoming a certified agent. I did just legal work, litigation, and nonprofit organization law for a variety of clients. And one of those clients happened to be a former professional football player, American football, played in the NFL briefly, was a college football star. And I ended up working with him and his family on their foundation. And that really opened the door and opened my eyes to what it looked like to not just be an attorney for athletes, but actually represent them as agents, or as the NFL calls it, contract advisors. And so I became a certified contract advisor in 2005 and had no idea what I was doing. I knew I loved sports, and I wanted to be able to combine my legal experience and all my backgrounds, even working with the media, journalism degree. And so all of my sort of passions and things that I love to do and things that I felt skilled at led me to this career. So I have been basically a football agent for the last 16 years and have represented players in every NFL draft since then. Since 2006 was my first draft. I think it would be easier to explain my job by saying what I don't do as opposed to what I do. I pretty much handle everything when it comes to their careers, to my athletes' careers, and from their training to their contract negotiations to just their living situations, where they live, when they buy a house, all of that, all their marketing, all their media. And so I handle all their legal stuff. So I pretty much manage and represent them in every aspect of their professional lives.
Wow, that's super interesting. And you said that you're a certified agent. So I know that the role of the agent differs between different sports and countries, what is required. But so what does it take to be a certified agent as you are?
Right. So certification is a process that is set up for each individual sport or each sport. So football, NFL has a process, NBA has a process, and so on. And I wanted to become certified to represent players in the NFL. And so it's kind of a long process. You have to submit an application at the beginning of the year. Each year, there's kind of this window of application process. You have to have either a law degree or some sort of postgraduate degree. So an MBA or the equivalent, or a law degree. I always recommend to new agents that they get a law degree. So you have to have that. And then you submit an application. You pay a fee. It's a pretty hefty fee just to apply for the test. It's $2,500 US dollars.
Wow.
Just to submit an application. And that doesn't guarantee you're accepted. And then if you're accepted, the NFL Players Association, so the union, is in charge of sort of vetting the applicants. And then later in the year, during the summer, they actually do an exam. So they'll present the materials. They send out the materials early in the year. Hopefully you study all year long, and then you take the test at the end of July, beginning of August. And if you pass the test, and the test is very difficult, it's not easy to pass. I think the passage rates may be 30-40%. Then you're officially certified. And then you have to pay union dues and jump through all the other hoops that are required to be licensed and stay licensed. But that's where you start. You start by taking a test with the union and passing that exam.
That's very extensive. And let's say you go through all of these stages as you explained, as you did, and now you are a certified agent. Mm-hmm. And it's a very competitive business, and you explain it in the book as well when you started.
Yeah.
Can you just tell us a little bit about this first, I think, as a conference that you attended the first time?
Yes. And by the way, if you take the test and you fail, you only get one more time to take it, and then you have to wait 5 years to do it again.
Oh, wow.
And it's only given once a year. So lots and lots of pressure to pass. But even if you pass, that doesn't guarantee you're going to even sign one client. And as an agent, when you enter the business, you're competing against all other certified agents for clients, for new clients. And so you have to recruit players who are not represented. So typically players in college. And you do that really like a college coach does. You review scouting reports. You try to make connections with players and their families or people in their sphere of influence, and do everything you can to try to get in front of a player and the decision makers in his life. And then sell yourself. Let's basically say, this is what I can do for you. This is why you should hire me. This is why you should trust me with your career and your life. And that's no easy task to try to earn the trust of a player, especially when you're brand new. Like everyone is, but like I was in the beginning. And I was at a further disadvantage because I didn't join an agency when I became an agent. I basically said, okay, I'm going to do this and I'm going to start my own company, which is honestly pretty crazy. I didn't have a track record. I didn't have any clients, no experience. And so I really had to sort of jump into it on blind faith, hoping that players would trust me. And I was fortunate to find a few that did early on. And I got experience and learned the business, really fighting for them and just being hungry to achieve success for them. And in the process, build my own company. But honestly, at the time back then, I didn't have connections to the industry. And also agencies weren't really hiring women to be agents. I could have maybe started as a client services person or a receptionist or a marketing rep, and nothing wrong with any of those roles. That's just not what I wanted to do. And so I had to kind of pave my own way. And I made a lot of mistakes, as I outline in the book. There were a lot of embarrassing moments when I had no idea what I was doing. I just knew I needed to get in front of a potential NFL draft pick and convince him to trust me. And it took, I signed someone right off the bat. My very first year, I've represented players in every draft, but it has not been easy. And it continues to be very cutthroat and even to a certain extent corrupt, which was kind of the most disappointing part of the game is, goodness, this is not a level playing field. There are agents who are engaging in unscrupulous behavior and paying players under the table, which is not allowed. And yet people are getting away with it. And so I came in with my, ideals and my integrity and wanting to do things the way I would want it done if it was my son or my brother who was a player. And it was very difficult, but I've been really fortunate now to be around the business as long as I have been and have had success representing players every year.
Yeah. So something else that you mentioned in the book was that it seems like you are focusing a lot on the relationship and the trust part. Do you think that this could be your kind of competitive advantage, that you really care for your athletes and look after them?
I would hope so. That's, when I am competing to sign players and families are hearing all kinds of great sales pitches about how much an agent or an agency is going to do for the player. And it all sounds really good, but it does, in my opinion, it comes down to, does the agent really truly care about the person? And that's really what my book is about, is helping the players that I'm recruiting and then end up representing and fighting for and advocating for throughout their careers and even in retirement. I want them to know that it's to me, it's not just, getting a win. It's not just seeing them as a dollar figure or a contract. It's seeing them as a whole person and someone who has value and worth well beyond what he's able to do on the football field. Yes, that's important. And that's an amazing gift and talent. And all of my players work so hard and go through so much to get to that elite level. But it's also, I've seen so much on the other side when a player is done with his career, suddenly looking around going, well, who am I? What's my worth? What's my value as a human being now that I'm no longer playing football? And I just decided to hit that from the very beginning and say, okay, I'm going to fight for you and I'm going to make sure you have the best career possible and have great representation through that career. But I also want to make sure that you feel valued as a human being. And it truly is a relationship where they know that I genuinely and deeply care about them and their family.
Yeah, and that there was another funny story in the book that you mentioned with an athlete that had to do an MRI scan, that he was so scared. He was this big, strong athlete, but he didn't want to do it. I mean, I don't know, but I'm guessing that maybe most agents wouldn't go to those lengths that you did.
No, to that story. And it's probably my favorite story in the book. The player that I was representing was the best player I'd ever represented in my career. He was such a top athlete, very gifted, well known. Everybody expected him to be a high draft pick. And there we were at the combine, which is where all the teams evaluate the top talent. And he was asked in the medical part of it to go through an MRI, but he was very claustrophobic. And so he was scared to death to even go into the MRI machine. And we worked for hours to get him to be still enough to do the MRI. And the tech, the medical person that was there with us kept saying, I've never seen an agent go to these lengths. I've never seen an agent just, stick there with their client. And I sat with him for 4 hours, I think. And powered him through. I told jokes, I sang, at one point when he was crying, I was like rubbing the top of his head going, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And no, I don't think many agents would do that. But in that moment, he needed someone. He didn't just need an agent telling him to man up. He needed someone that said, I'm going to be here with you and we're going to get through this together.
That's an amazing story. This episode is sponsored by InSport Education, the online business school for sport. They offer a range of different courses, for example, Foundations of Sport Business, Private Equity in Sport, and much, much more. As a listener to this podcast, you get 10% off all of their courses using the code SportsManagementPodcast10. Click the link in the description below and sign up today. In 2010, you made history as the first woman to represent a first-round pick in the NFL draft, and you are also recognized as one of the most influential women in the sports business. So I know it's been a rocky road, but now do you believe that maybe you are making grounds for future women in sports?
What I've realized is there are a lot of industries that are considered male dominated, that have for a long time, most of the people in the industry have been men. And, I'm not trying to say men are bad or men are not good at what they do. Not, by any means. That I have a job because my clients, who happen to be men, young men, believe in me, and I have to work with men and negotiate with men. So there's not really I don't view it as if, men are the enemy. But when I did become an agent, I was a bit surprised that not just there weren't a lot of women, that didn't really bother me, but that people would question my ability to be an agent simply because of my gender. And that didn't make sense to me. Because in my mind, I thought, gosh, first of all, my gender shouldn't matter, but I feel like what makes me unique, every agent wants to be unique. Every agent wants to say, here are my strengths and here's what makes me different from everybody else that you're considering working with. And for me, it was natural. It was, as a woman and as Kelli, as myself, here are the strengths that I have to offer. And here are the things that make me stand out from the crowd. And so I saw being a woman is actually an advantage in a lot of ways, because it did make me automatically different from, 95 or more percent of the rest of the field. And so I saw it as an advantage, and I just was undeterred when I was told. I literally was told to my face. That's another story in the book. I was told to my face by a male agent that I really looked up to that women would never make it in the business. And I just said, you know what, I'm going to prove you wrong. And I'm so thankful now, because there are many other young women who have now followed, that path. I'm not going to say followed in my footsteps, because I've not been the only woman to do this. But I think the entry into the business, it's a tough business no matter who you are, but the entry barrier is no longer there. Women are not being told you can't do this because of your gender. And so I feel like that's a win, that not that we're going to get any advantages by being women, other than just being ourselves, but that there's not, we're not being questioned or held back because of who we are. And so I think that, to me, that's a victory, because I know, my players appreciate who I am and how I fight for them and how I protect them. And that's what players are looking for. They're looking for someone, male, female, color, doesn't matter. They're looking for someone who believes in them, that they can trust to be their advocate. And I think I've proven over time that women are just as capable of that.
For women listening who aspires for a career much like yours, what would be your best advice?
I would kind of go back to what I just talked about, seeing who you are as a person being a strength, as opposed to being defensive about it or making excuses. You really do have to have a thick skin, obviously, because things might be said to you, or you might run into obstacles that seem unfair. But those things just make you stronger and should light the fire inside of you more to just be who you're called to be. And so that would be my advice to any woman or any person really that is aspiring to a job or to a career that looks impossible or looks difficult, or maybe there's some adversity that someone has to go through in order to accomplish that dream. I would say dig deep. I would say really, really take the time to press in, to pray, to seek wisdom and learn as much as you can about an industry. Meet as many people as you can to develop that really important network that is so important in any career you go into. Working hard, learning the industry, meeting people, developing great relationships, earning respect, all of those things. Just focus on doing those things and focus less on perceived disadvantages. Focus on your differences as being strengths.
I think that's great advice. In addition to your role as the NFL agent, you're also an entrepreneur with the KMM sports that you're running. We have talked a lot about different leadership styles since this is the sports management podcast. How would you classify your own leadership style?
It's a word that I've grown up hearing, or a phrase that I've grown up hearing, kind of growing up in what's the part of America that's kind of called the Bible Belt, where a lot of our lives are shaped by sort of the Judeo-Christian values. And one of those values is being what's called a servant leader. And that sounds like it doesn't make sense, but I would look at my own leadership style as being that of a servant leader, meaning that I don't think of myself as more important or better than anyone else on my team or in my company, but I have certain responsibilities that I have to step into and carry out. But in doing so, in fulfilling my responsibilities and obligations as a leader, my heart should always be to serve. How can I help others? How can I make our company better? How can I encourage and empower the people on my team to step up and do what they're called to do and fulfill their responsibilities? How can we all serve one another? And when you have a leader, everything starts with, the top down in a company. When you have a leader at the top whose heart is service and taking care of people and not just, gaining power for themselves or asking other people to serve them. When as a leader, when I approach my team in a way that has that servant's heart, where I'm seeking to help as opposed to push down, then that just empowers everybody on the team to do the same thing and also act as servant leaders. And I'm very, very fortunate. It's been a slow growth process on purpose with KMM. It's been very organic. People who have become part of KMM are people that go through this long process, but they all share the same kind of common trait, and that's they have that heart to serve, and they have a heart to make things about serving the clients and looking at the bigger picture as opposed to being selfish. And so I think that, hopefully I set the tone for that culture in our company, and I hope that continues.
Your religious beliefs are mentioned a lot in the book as well, and you mentioned it now also in your leadership style. How does that play out in your work role? Because there are obviously different religious beliefs, and some people don't believe in religion. So could that somehow be a difficulty?
What I've learned, and even when I wrote the book, when I started writing, I didn't expect for my faith to become such a huge part of the book. But I also realized how deeply rooted, my values were. And that's where it comes. And I try to even explain in the book that, I know that readers of this book are not all going to share the same beliefs and faith that I do. And that's okay. But I hope you still glean wisdom and principles, sort of life skills and integrity, and the things that are common to human, to all human beings. Integrity and that excellence about us, regardless of where that is fueled, if that's fueled by faith or not, or religion or not. I think we can all strive to be the best version of ourselves. And so I hope that comes through in the book, that here are my deeply held beliefs, but you don't have to share those in order to gain something from this book. And I love learning from other cultures and religions as well. And so although I have my strongly held beliefs, I have such respect for people, and there are other people that are different from me that have other deeply held beliefs. And people often ask, well, do you just recruit and represent Christian athletes? And I'm like, no, that would be so limiting. I like to find common ground. And so not all of my athletes are necessarily strong believers in God or strong believers or followers of Jesus, but we have respect for each other. And I think what I see when I'm speaking with players and with families, I'm not sitting there, preaching or evangelizing while I'm getting to know them, but I'm saying, here's me, here's my heart. Here are the things that are the guiding light in my life, the guiding principles in my life. And so this is who I am. And I've had players and families say, we don't share your beliefs, but we have respect for the fact that you want to operate according to a set of principles and according to high standards for excellence and integrity. And so even for families that don't necessarily share the same faith or beliefs that I do, there's still something that connects us. And I think it's that desire to accomplish something bigger that's beyond just ourselves and be connected to something that is more universal. And so I think that even though maybe there are some players or families that say, oh, we're just not comfortable working with someone like you, that's okay. There's someone else out there for them that can help them. But the families and the players that were drawn to each other doesn't necessarily depend on sharing exactly the same beliefs.
We have mentioned the book many times, but I'm not sure even if we have mentioned what it's called. It's called A High Impact Life, and it's available both as an audiobook and a hard copy, maybe also an ebook. I don't know.
It is, yes. It's available on ebook too.
Perfect. The listeners can get themselves a copy. I highly recommend it. I told you before the interview, I listened to the book and I just felt like we had to talk more about your career.
Thank you. I'm so glad you reached out.
In addition to your role as an agent, you are also a professor at Oklahoma City University and Oklahoma Christian University, teaching sports law. Mm-hmm. So what made you want to be a professor and teach the up and coming?
You know, maybe it goes back to I was just asked if I would be willing to, that there was a demand that a lot of students were interested in doing what I do and learning about how to combine a legal background or legal career with a passion for a variety of sports. And I saw that as such a great opportunity. But I also realized I didn't have that. When I was in law school, there were no sports law professors. There were no sports law classes. And so I really had to learn on my own. And to be able to offer that and even bring my real life perspective to it, I know, and I think probably a lot of people share the sentiment that were in college or went to law school, adjunct professors who were actually practitioners as well as in a classroom were so great to learn from, because they would bring what was happening in their daily lives and in their careers and this real life experience. And as a student, I loved that. I loved sort of having a professor that wasn't just academic, but could also pull back the curtain and say, okay, here's what it really looks like in the real world. And here's how the things that you're learning apply when you're actually out there doing the work. And I loved that. And so I was able to bring all of that to my students. In fact, I just hired a brand new agent named JT. He passed the bar exam last year to become a lawyer. He passed the agent exam to become an agent. He has worked for me for the last couple of years. And he was a student in my sports law class at Oklahoma City University Law School. And I never would have connected with him and been able to share what was possible, with him if I had not decided to be a professor as well. So I think hopefully it's impacting lives, which is what I love to do.
That's amazing, amazing story. Do you have internships?
I do. I get so many applications. I get so many people that reach out really on a daily basis now that want to do internships. And I have to be very selective, but I am open. I accept 1 or 2 interns every semester. And some of those interns come in and they get a glimpse of the business and they say, oh, this is not really for me. And then others like JT say, I've found my calling. This is what I'm supposed to do with my life. And that's what internships really should be. It should be for learning and discerning, is this the career path that I want to be on? And I hope I'm providing that through my internship program.
That sounds great. On the previous episodes, we talked to a sports lawyer, but with focus on football or soccer. And we talked about some funny clauses that he had seen in contracts. And one clause he mentioned, for example, was that a player was not allowed to travel to space. Was written in the contract. So, do you have any funny clauses that you've seen in some NFL contracts?
Oh my goodness. There have been, most NFL contracts are pretty standard. It's a lot of it. You see the same language over and over. There's always language to the effect of players that are prohibited from riding motorcycles or skydiving. Obviously, you see that in there. I had one player who had, it was a little bit embarrassing. He had held a draft party at a local club, and it didn't go well. It ended up being a little bit of a disaster of a party. And so the when we signed his contract, the club specifically named the club in the contract that you cannot go back to this club, this particular club ever for a party. And he was mortified. He was so embarrassed. But yeah, for the most part, the collective bargaining agreement controls what we put in contracts, but you occasionally see some funny stuff.
Yeah, that is a funny story.
Yes.
Approaching the end here, is there something that I haven't asked you that you feel is important to mention?
I think we've covered pretty much everything that I would hope to cover. I think it's important for anyone listening to this that, when you look at people's lives, whether it's, and now we feel like we're all so accessible and we can have this window into the lives of other people. But I want everyone to keep this in mind. When you're looking at other people's lives, you're only seeing what people are willing for you to see. You're not seeing the pain and the struggles and the setbacks and the failures and the embarrassments and all of that, daily on a daily basis in social media. And so it can be really easy to compare our own lives to the filtered version that we see in media or on social media. And I just want to encourage anyone, if you're looking at my life, first of all, read my book, because you'll see just how embarrassing my life has been and how much failure I've experienced. That my life may look really fun and successful, but there have been a lot of peaks and valleys through the process, and everybody goes through that. And so that would be my encouragement, is don't just assume that everybody else has an easier or more successful life than you do. We all go through battles. We all go through difficulties and pain. And there's a purpose for all of it. And through those things, we grow and we become stronger and we become the people that we are meant to be. And so do not get discouraged because other people look like they're having more success than you or are happier than you. Focus on your own life. Focus on being the best version of yourself and impacting other people's lives. Worry less about what other people think of you and worry more about how can I impact the world around me.
Fantastic. And of course, we have mentioned so many times, buy the book. And since you mentioned social media, if the listeners wants to follow you, how can they do that?
I'm on Instagram at Kelli Masters. It's Kelli with an I, and Masters like the golf tournament. Kelli Masters. And then on Twitter, I'm at KMM Sports.
Perfect. So before we sign off, I always ask the guests, if you could choose the next guest on this podcast, who would you recommend that I would speak to?
Oh, wow. I'd probably pick one of my athletes. To be honest, I obviously work with NFL players, and I have some really fascinating NFL players that I work with. Tress Way, he is with the Washington football team. He's a punter, which I understand that punter means different things in different countries. So I don't know what that means in Spain. But he punts the ball down the field with his foot. So closest thing to soccer. And the only thing in football that you actually do with your foot is kick. So I would say Tress, he's really, really funny. He's just got a very entertaining and lively personality. So I would vote for him.
Sounds good. Kelli Masters, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the Sports Management Podcast.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the Sports Management Podcast. Please hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any upcoming episodes. Also, feel free to leave a comment about what you thought about this episode. If you want to get in contact with me, send an email to sportsmpodcast@gmail.com or hit me up on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram @sportsmpodcast.